The moment Nathaniel Carter saw his coworker sit down at the wrong table, his stomach dropped so hard it felt like the ground had opened beneath him. It wasn't just a simple mistake. It was the one table he had carefully reserved in the corner of the little Italian restaurant in downtown Charlotte, North Carolina. The table with the extra chair, the one facing the window, the one he had prepared for weeks in his mind. And as he stood there frozen, watching his coworker, Madison Brooks, gently place her purse on the table and smooth out her dress like she belonged there, something inside him twisted with confusion and dread. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles that happen in ordinary lives, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that sometimes the smallest misunderstandings lead to the biggest blessings. Nathaniel hadn't always been the kind of man who overthought dinner reservations. 3 years earlier, he had been a husband, a homeowner, and a dreamer with a steady life mapped out in neat, predictable lines. But after losing his wife, Claire, in a sudden car accident on Interstate 77, everything shattered. He was left with a 5-year-old son named Oliver and a silence that echoed through their small house every night. Being a single dad wasn't something he had trained for. It was something that happened to him without warning. Mornings became a blur of packing lunches, tying tiny sneakers, and rushing to daycare before racing across town to his job at a mid-sized marketing firm. Evenings were filled with microwave dinners, bath time negotiations, and bedtime stories he sometimes struggled to read without his voice cracking. At work, Nathaniel kept his head down. He didn't attend happy hours. He avoided office gossip. He left precisely at 5 o'clock to pick up Oliver. Most of his coworkers respected his distance, but Madison was different. Madison Brooks had joined the firm a year earlier, transferred from their Chicago branch. She was sharp, creative, and carried herself with quiet confidence. Unlike others, she never treated Nathaniel like a fragile man made of glass. She didn't offer pity, she offered partnership. She stayed late to help him finish presentations when he had to leave early. She volunteered to cover meetings when Oliver got sick. She asked about Oliver by name, remembering the details of his kindergarten art projects and soccer practices. Over time, something unspoken grew between them. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was subtle. The way she'd slide a coffee onto his desk on tough mornings, the way his shoulders would relax when she walked into a room. Nathaniel felt it, but fear wrapped around his heart like barbed wire. Loving someone again felt like betraying Claire. Letting someone close felt like risking another unbearable loss. Still, after months of internal battles, he decided to take a step forward. He invited Madison to dinner under the pretense of celebrating the successful launch of a major campaign. She agreed with a soft smile that lingered a little longer than usual. But tonight, as he stood in the restaurant watching her at the wrong table, anxiety flooded him. That table wasn't meant for just the two of them. The extra chair was for Oliver. He had planned to introduce the two most important people in his life in one carefully orchestrated evening. He had rehearsed how he would explain to Oliver that it was okay to let someone new into their world. He had imagined Madison's reaction when she realized he trusted her enough to meet his son. So why was she sitting there alone, facing the window, unaware of the meaning behind it? Nathaniel forced his feet to move. He approached slowly, noticing the faint tremor in his hands. The restaurant buzzed with soft conversations and clinking glasses, but his heartbeat drowned everything out. He expected awkwardness. He expected confusion. What he didn't expect was what he saw when he finally reached the table. Oliver was already there. His small legs swung beneath the chair, his dark hair neatly combed, wearing the tiny blue blazer Nathaniel had helped him button earlier. And Madison wasn't surprised. She wasn't startled. She was smiling at him. Not the polite office smile Nathaniel knew, but a warm, almost tender one. In that moment, realization hit Nathaniel like a wave. Madison hadn't taken the wrong table. She had arrived early. She had picked Oliver up from the babysitter herself. Nathaniel's breath caught in his throat. He remembered the brief text she had sent that afternoon asking what time Oliver would be ready. He had assumed she was just being considerate. He hadn't imagined she would take initiative, that she would step into his complicated world so naturally. Oliver looked up and grinned. His voice carried excitement that Nathaniel hadn't heard in months. He had been nervous about this dinner, worried his son might feel confused or resistant. Instead, Oliver looked at Madison like she was someone he already trusted. Nathaniel felt his carefully constructed fears begin to crumble. They ate dinner together, not as coworkers navigating an awkward transition, but as three people slowly weaving their lives together. Madison listened intently as Oliver explained his dream of becoming a firefighter. She laughed at his exaggerated stories. She didn't try to replace anyone. She didn't try too hard. She simply showed up. As the night unfolded, Nathaniel watched her in a new light. He saw the way she subtly wiped sauce from Oliver's chin without making him feel embarrassed. He noticed how she asked Nathaniel about Claire, not with jealousy, but with respect. She understood that Claire was part of their story, not a shadow to compete with. Halfway through dessert, Nathaniel felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years: hope. But hope is fragile, and just as he began to relax, his old fears whispered again. What if this didn't last? What if Oliver got attached and lost someone again? What if he was misreading everything? The answer came in a quiet, unplanned moment. Oliver excused himself to the restroom, and for the first time that evening, Nathaniel and Madison sat alone. The city lights outside reflected softly against the glass. Nathaniel looked at her and saw not just a coworker, not just a woman he was attracted to, but someone who had stepped into chaos without hesitation. She hadn't waited for him to be perfectly healed. She hadn't demanded guarantees. She had chosen to sit at that table, his table, because she wanted to be part of the life he was building, messy and unfinished as it was. And that was when he realized why she had taken that seat. She wasn't claiming a chair, she was claiming a future. The rest of the evening passed gently, like a page turning in a book. When they walked out of the restaurant into the cool North Carolina night, Oliver held Madison's hand on one side and Nathaniel's on the other. It wasn't dramatic. There were no grand declarations, just a quiet understanding that something new had begun. In the weeks that followed, life didn't magically become perfect. There were awkward moments, scheduling conflicts, emotional conversations about boundaries and memories. But there was also laughter. There were shared breakfasts. There were evenings when Nathaniel came home from work to find Madison helping Oliver with homework at the kitchen table. One night, months later, as Nathaniel tucked Oliver into bed, his son looked up and asked if Madison would come to his school play. There was no fear in his voice, only expectation. Nathaniel realized that love hadn't replaced the past. It had expanded their world. Standing in the hallway afterward, he felt tears rise. Not from grief this time, but from gratitude. He had thought Madison had taken the wrong table. In reality, she had chosen exactly the right one. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that life can surprise us in the most beautiful ways, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps these stories reach people who need hope the most. And before we end, I have a special request. Comment the word hope below if you believe that second chances are real. Because sometimes the table we think is wrong is the very place where healing begins. Sometimes the seat we hesitate to offer becomes the seat that changes everything. And sometimes in the middle of confusion and fear, love quietly sits down beside us and waits, patient, steady, and ready to build something new.